You can catch yourself a lot of times not being the best version of you due to stress. Hey everyone, it's been 2 years since I left medicine to work as a doctor in a health tech startup. Since I started working in health tech, I've learned so much, and there's definitely things about the hospital and clinical medicine that I miss and things that I can definitely do without forever. So my experience comes from working in the hospital as a training doctor. So this comes from a perspective of a junior doctor rather than a specialist. I think the experience of a specialist may be different because you may own your own business or clinic, so that you may be able to control your hours better and you don't have to deal with the same things as you would in the hospital. One of the things that I miss the most about working in the hospital is working directly with patients. I became a doctor because I loved working with patients. I loved learning the science and applying it to my patients. I loved talking to their families, talking to them, and really seeing them through their journey. I've always had amazing colleagues and mentors to look up to in medicine, and there's just something about suffering in medicine. When you suffer together, it bonds you even closer. So I was always very close to the doctors that I worked with, most of them at least. We all know that being a doctor isn't easy, and we have to deal with a lot of suffering, a lot of busy work, and a lot of stress. I felt like most of the time we are always backing each other, and that kind of bond you just never forget. I think that I was so lucky within my year of working in the hospital to have senior doctors who supported me and doctors who are friends today and I keep close contact with. Not only that, when you're in the hospital, you're working with other nurses and allied healthcare professionals, and they all come from a healthcare background. So we all had this one goal to help take care of the patient. And that was always fun. There was this team atmosphere. As a doctor, your job title and description is very clearly defined. There's a set pathway of how you progress throughout your career, so you know exactly what you're getting into, and when people hire you, they know exactly what they're getting. So I think as a doctor, people understand what you do, so it's pretty easy to get a job anywhere. And it's of course based on your reputation, your connections, and your referrals. There's a shortage of doctors, so you'll never have to worry about not being able to find a job as a doctor. Because there's a set path for doctors, you know exactly what you need to do to specialize in the field that you want to develop a career in. I can't say the same for other careers. Also, one of the things that I definitely miss about being a doctor in the hospital is you are constantly on your feet, and that can also be a bad thing, but you're constantly running around to see patients, to answer phone calls, to do paperwork, to talk to family members, to update patients, to review patients, and you're on your feet, you're moving around. It definitely doesn't ever get boring. I actually really enjoyed that adrenaline rush. I thrived off of it. I like being really busy and I like being active. And every day is different. You'll see different patients, you'll have different cases, you'll have different emergencies, and sometimes you'll be working with different team members. So it definitely never got boring, and I always found it really exciting. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of pros to working as a doctor in the hospital. Now to the cons of working in the hospital. I think some of these are quite well known. Working as a doctor in the hospital is quite inflexible. You don't really get to create your schedule. The schedule can be quite tough because you can be working weekends, you can be working nights, and on days you're not working, you can be on call. it can be a very life-consuming schedule. I think the culture of medicine has gotten a lot better, but there's a lot of traditions that still hold, and it's a very demanding job, and the stress is high, the pressure is high, and sometimes that can create a lot of tension between people you work with. And I think that sometimes that doesn't bring the best out in people. And even in me, when I was stressed out, sometimes I get really frustrated. You can catch yourself a lot of times not being the best version of you due to stress. And anyone in a very high pressure, high stress situation can react that way. So I had to learn through experience of ways to deal with that high pressure and that high stress. Some people don't do as well in those environments. It can cause poor communication between coworkers and sometimes even bullying. And I think it can really affect your mental health. It can cause a lot of stress and anxiety. I had to develop ways to cope with that stress and anxiety through meditation, exercise, and also seeking professional help, talking to a therapist, talking to a doctor, so that I took care of my mental health in a way that would not impact my professional life. Also, when you're in medicine, you go where the job takes you. You may have to move quite a bit depending on what medical school you go to, what residency program you get into, what fellowship you get into. You may have to move to get the right training for what specialty you want to go into. Medicine is hard enough, and without that social support, it's even harder. And if anything, doctors work really hard, long hours. It's also notoriously hard to take time off as a doctor, because if you fall sick, they need to find another doctor to replace you, and that's not so easy. And there is a shortage of doctors, so doctors are already time poor. I remember when I was really sick and I had this really bad cough, and of course I should not be working with patients when I'm that sick. And even my team members were like, "Lee, don't come to work, you shouldn't go to work." But I called up HR and they said, "We don't have anyone to replace you, you need to come into work." And it was really difficult for me to find someone to replace me so that I could stay home and rest and get better. And that's not an uncommon story. It's usually very hard for doctors to take time off even though they get sick as well. So those are my pros and cons of working as a doctor in the hospital. And there is definitely a lot more, but those are the main ones that I have experienced in my time. Hope you're staying healthy, hope you're doing well. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help in any way that I can. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye everyone.